The golden morning sun painted the ancient stones of the royal palace with warm light as the black Mercedes slowly approached the main entrance. Inside the car sat Cristiano Ronaldo, his eyes focused on the impressive building that had stood for centuries. He was wearing a perfectly tailored navy blue suit that made him look even more handsome than usual. His hair was styled to perfection, and his famous smile was calm but confident. Today was supposed to be a normal day for the football superstar. He had been invited to receive a special honor from the Spanish royal family for his outstanding contribution to sports. This was not his first time visiting such important places, but something felt different about today. Maybe it was the way the morning light danced on the palace walls or the peaceful atmosphere that surrounded the ancient building. As his car pulled up to the entrance, Ronaldo could see dozens of photographers and reporters waiting behind the security barriers. They had been there since early morning, hoping to capture the perfect shot of the world-famous athlete. Their cameras were ready and their voices created a buzz of excitement in the air. Some of them had traveled from different countries just to be part of this special moment. The driver opened the door and Ronaldo stepped out gracefully. The sound of camera shutters immediately filled the air like rainfall on a roof. Flashlights blinked constantly as the media tried to get the best pictures. Ronaldo waved politely to the crowd and smiled his trademark smile that had made millions of fans around the world fall in love with him. But as he started walking toward the palace entrance, something caught his attention that made him slow down his steps. His sharp eyes noticed 4 figures standing perfectly still near the main doorway. These were not ordinary people. They were members of the royal guard dressed in their traditional bright red uniforms with gold buttons that sparkled in the sunlight. The guards stood like statues carved from stone. Their backs were straight as arrows and their faces showed no emotion at all. Each one held a rifle in exactly the same position, and their eyes looked straight ahead without blinking. They had been standing there since the early hours of the morning, and would continue standing until their duty shift ended many hours later. Most people who visited the palace walked past these guards without paying any attention to them. Visitors were usually too excited about meeting royalty or too busy taking selfies to notice the silent protectors. The guards had become part of the background, like the ancient walls or the beautiful gardens. People treated them as if they were not real human beings but just decorations. Ronaldo stopped walking and studied the 4 guards more carefully. He could see tiny drops of sweat on their foreheads, even though the morning was still cool. Their heavy uniforms with thick fabric and metal decorations must have been very uncomfortable under the warming sun. Yet none of them moved even a single muscle or showed any sign of discomfort. The first guard was a tall man with broad shoulders who looked to be in his 30s. His uniform was perfectly clean and pressed without a single wrinkle. His boots were polished so well that they reflected the palace walls like mirrors. His face was serious but peaceful, and his breathing was so controlled that his chest barely moved up and down. The second guard was slightly shorter, but equally impressive. He had kind eyes that remained fixed on the distance even though Ronaldo was now standing quite close to him. This guard looked younger than the first one, and there was something about his posture that reminded Ronaldo of his own determination when he was starting his football career. The third guard stood with the same perfect discipline as his companions. He was holding his position with such dedication that birds had even built a small nest in a nearby tree, thinking he was part of the building. His commitment to duty was so strong that nothing in the world could distract him from his responsibility to protect the royal palace. The fourth guard was clearly the most experienced among them all. Gray hair was visible under his ceremonial hat, and his weathered hands told stories of many years spent in service to his country. His eyes held wisdom that comes only from decades of faithful duty, and his presence commanded respect from everyone who saw him. As Ronaldo continued to observe these remarkable men, he began to feel something stirring deep inside his heart. These guards reminded him of his own journey to success. They were dedicated, disciplined, and committed to excellence just like he had been throughout his football career. They stood there hour after hour without complaining, just like he had practiced hour after hour on the football field when he was young. The crowd of reporters and officials who had been following Ronaldo began to wonder why he had stopped walking. They looked around trying to understand what had caught the attention of the famous athlete. Some of them raised their cameras thinking that maybe something important was about to happen, but they could not guess what Ronaldo was planning to do. The palace staff members who were waiting to escort Ronaldo inside also noticed that he had paused near the guards. They checked their watches and wondered if they should approach him to remind him about his scheduled meeting with the royal family. But something about the way Ronaldo was looking at the guards made them decide to wait and see what would happen next. The security personnel who were responsible for keeping order during the visit started to pay closer attention to the situation. They could see that Ronaldo was studying the guards with great interest, but they could not understand why. In all their years of working at the palace, they had never seen a visitor stop and really look at the royal guard with such focus and concentration. Even the guards themselves, despite their training to remain completely motionless, began to sense that something unusual was happening. They could feel the presence of the famous footballer standing near them, and they could hear the increased activity from the crowd of media and officials. But their discipline was so strong that they continued to maintain their positions without moving their eyes or changing their expressions. The morning sun continued to rise higher in the sky, and the light became brighter and warmer. The palace. Grounds were filled with the sounds of cameras clicking, people whispering, and footsteps on the ancient stones. But in the small area where Ronaldo stood facing the four guards, there was a special kind of silence that seemed to separate them from everything else around them. This was the moment when something extraordinary was about to begin. Something that would be remembered for years to come and would show the world a side of Cristiano Ronaldo that few people had ever seen before. The stage was set for an act of respect and humanity that would touch the hearts of millions of people around the globe. Something deep inside Ronaldo's heart began to stir as he continued to watch the four guards standing in perfect formation. The feeling grew stronger with each passing moment, like a flame that was slowly being fed with oxygen. He thought about his own childhood in Madeira, where his family had very little money and his mother worked multiple jobs just to put food on the table. He remembered the nights when he would practice football alone on the streets under the dim streetlights while other children were sleeping in their warm beds. He thought about the countless hours he spent training, when his body was tired and his muscles ached. He recalled the times when coaches shouted at him and told him he was not good enough, but he never gave up on his dreams. These memories flooded back to him as he looked at the guards who were showing the same kind of dedication and commitment that had made him successful. They were standing there under the increasingly warm sun, sweating inside their heavy uniforms, yet maintaining perfect discipline without a single complaint. Their devotion to duty reminded him of his own journey from a poor boy in Portugal to becoming one of the greatest footballers in the world. The first guard, the tall man with broad shoulders, had small beads of perspiration forming on his forehead. The morning sun was getting stronger, and his thick red uniform with its gold decorations was absorbing the heat. Yet his expression remained completely calm and professional. His eyes continued to stare straight ahead, as if he was looking at something important in the distance that only he could see. Ronaldo noticed how the guard's breathing was perfectly controlled, despite the discomfort he must have been feeling. The athlete in Ronaldo recognized this kind of physical and mental discipline. It was the same kind of control he had learned to develop during his most difficult training sessions and important matches. This guard was not just standing there, he was demonstrating a masterclass in self-control and dedication. The second guard, the younger one with kind eyes, seemed to be fighting his own battle against the heat and the weight of his uniform. Ronaldo could see the determination in his face, even though the guard was not allowed to show any emotion. There was something about this young soldier that reminded Ronaldo of himself when he first joined the youth academy at Sporting Lisbon. The same hunger for excellence, the same willingness to endure hardship for a greater purpose. As Ronaldo continued to observe, he began to understand that these men were not just doing a job. They were living their commitment to something bigger than themselves. They were protecting not just a building, but the history, tradition, and dignity of their nation. Every minute they stood there, every drop of sweat that fell from their faces, every moment of discomfort they endured was a sacrifice for their country and their people. The third guard stood with such perfect posture that he looked like a statue created by a master sculptor. His rifle was held at exactly the right angle, and his feet were positioned with mathematical precision. Even the way he breathed seemed to be calculated and controlled. Ronaldo realized that this level of perfection required years of training and practice, just like the skills he had developed in football. The fourth guard, the experienced veteran with gray hair, carried himself with a dignity that came from decades of faithful service. His weathered hands told stories of countless days and nights spent protecting the palace and its important visitors. There was something noble about the way he maintained his position, despite his age, and the obvious physical demands of the duty. The gay crowd of reporters and photographers was becoming increasingly curious about why Ronaldo had stopped walking. They began to whisper among themselves, trying to figure out what was happening. Some of them started taking pictures of Ronaldo looking at the guards, thinking that maybe this was part of some planned ceremony they had not been told about. The palace officials who were waiting to escort Ronaldo inside began to look at their watches more frequently. They had a tight schedule to follow, and the royal family was expecting their honored guest at a specific time. But they could see that something important was happening, and they did not want to interrupt what seemed to be a significant moment. Security personnel positioned around the palace grounds began to pay closer attention to the situation. They could see that the famous footballer was completely focused on the guards, and that the crowd was starting to react to this unexpected pause in the proceedings. They remained alert, but did not interfere, sensing that this was a moment that should be allowed to unfold naturally. The guards themselves, despite their training to remain completely motionless and emotionless, could not help but be aware of the attention they were receiving. They could feel the presence of the world-famous athlete standing so close to them. They could hear the increased murmur from the crowd and the clicking of cameras, but their discipline held firm, and they continued to maintain their positions, without breaking their professional stance. Ronaldo felt a growing respect for these men that surprised him with its intensity. He had met presidents, kings, and prime ministers. He had received awards from the most powerful people in the world. But standing there, looking at these four guards, he felt something different. He felt humbled by their quiet dedication and their willingness to serve without seeking recognition or applause. The morning sun climbed higher in the sky, and the temperature continued to rise. The palace grounds were beautiful with their ancient architecture and carefully maintained gardens. But Ronaldo's attention was completely focused on the human beings who were doing their duty with such remarkable dedication. He could see that their uniforms were becoming more uncomfortable as the day grew warmer, yet not one of them showed any sign of weakness or complaint. In that moment, Ronaldo made a decision that would surprise everyone present and create a memory that would last forever. He decided that these men deserved recognition for their service and sacrifice. They deserved to be acknowledged not as living decorations or background figures, but as the dedicated professionals and patriots they truly were. The footballer straightened his shoulders and adjusted his suit jacket. He took a deep breath and prepared to do something that no visitor to the palace had ever done before. Something that would show his respect for these guards in a way that everyone present would understand and remember. The crowd, the officials, the security personnel, and even the guards themselves were about to witness an act of respect that would touch hearts around the world. As Ronaldo prepared to move forward, the atmosphere around the palace entrance seemed to change. There was a sense of anticipation in the air, as if everyone present somehow knew that they were about to see something special and meaningful. The stage was set for a moment of pure human connection that would transcend language, culture, and social status. Without any warning or announcement, Cristiano Ronaldo began to walk slowly toward the first guard. His movements were deliberate and respectful, like someone approaching a sacred place or an important ceremony. The clicking of his polished shoes on the ancient stone seemed louder than usual in the suddenly quiet atmosphere that had settled over the palace entrance. The crowd of reporters and photographers immediately sensed that something significant was about to happen. Cameras were raised and focused on the football superstar as he approached the tall guard with broad shoulders. The whispers and conversations that had been filling the air just moments before suddenly stopped completely. Everyone present seemed to hold their breath as they watched this unexpected scene begin to unfold. Ronaldo stopped directly in front of the first guard, maintaining a respectful distance of about 3 feet. The guard, trained to remain absolutely motionless regardless of what happened around him, kept his eyes fixed straight ahead. But there was something in his expression that showed he was aware of the famous footballer standing so close to him. His professional training battled with natural human curiosity about what was going to happen next. Then Ronaldo did something that shocked everyone present. He slowly raised his right hand to his forehead in a perfect military salute. His movement was precise and respectful, showing that he understood the significance of the gesture he was making. The salute was not hurried or casual, but held with dignity and genuine respect for several long seconds. The effect was immediate and powerful. The guard, still maintaining his official stance, could not completely hide the surprise that flickered across his face. His eyes remained looking straight ahead as his training demanded, but there was a slight softening in his expression that showed how much this unexpected honor meant to him. In all his years of service, no visitor had ever acknowledged him in such a respectful and meaningful way. The crowd that had gathered around the palace entrance was completely silent now. Photographers captured this extraordinary moment with their cameras, but even they seemed reluctant to make too much noise with their equipment. Everyone understood they were witnessing something special and rare, a moment of pure human respect and recognition that transcended the usual protocols and expectations of such formal occasions. Palace officials who had been waiting to escort Ronaldo inside stopped checking their watches and instead watched with growing amazement. They had seen thousands of important visitors come to the palace over the years, but none had ever stopped to honor the guards in such a personal and meaningful way. Some of them felt tears beginning to form in their eyes as they realized what they were seeing. Security personnel positioned around the grounds relaxed slightly as they understood that this was not a security concern, but rather an act of respect and honor. Many of them were former military personnel themselves, and they recognized the significance of what Ronaldo was doing. Some of them nodded in approval as they watched the scene unfold. After completing his salute to the first guard, Ronaldo lowered his hand and took a step backward. Then he moved to his left where the second guard was standing. This guard was the younger one with kind eyes who had reminded Ronaldo of his own early days in professional football. The young soldier maintained his perfect posture, but Ronaldo could see the anticipation in his expression. Once again, Ronaldo raised his hand in a crisp military salute. This time he held the position even longer, as if he wanted to make sure. The young guard fully understood the respect and recognition being offered to him. The young soldier's eyes remained fixed ahead as required by his training, but his face showed a mixture of pride, surprise, and deep gratitude that was impossible to hide completely. Word of what was happening began to spread quickly through the palace grounds. Staff members, dignitaries, and tourists who had been elsewhere in the complex started making their way toward the main entrance to see what was causing such excitement. The story passed from person to person like wildfire, and soon dozens of additional people were gathering to witness this unprecedented display of respect. The third guard, standing with statue-like perfection, watched from the corner of his eye as Ronaldo completed his salute to the second guard and began moving in his direction. This soldier had been maintaining his position with such dedication that birds in nearby trees had grown accustomed to his presence and no longer flew away when they saw him. His commitment to duty was absolute and unwavering. When Ronaldo reached the third guard, he paused for a moment longer than he had with the previous two. Something about this soldier's complete dedication to his duty seemed to strike a particularly deep chord with the footballer. Perhaps it reminded him of his own moments of complete focus during important matches, when everything else in the world seemed to disappear except for the task at hand. The salute Ronaldo gave to the third guard was, if possible, even more respectful and dignified than the previous two. He held his hand at his forehead with perfect military precision, while his eyes showed the genuine admiration he felt for this man's dedication and professionalism. The guard, despite his training to show no emotion, seemed to stand even straighter and prouder as he received this unexpected recognition. By now, the crowd that had gathered was quite large and completely silent. People were taking pictures and recording videos, but they were doing so quietly and respectfully, understanding that they were documenting something truly special. Many in the crowd had tears in their eyes as they watched this display of humanity and respect from one of the world's most famous athletes. The fourth and final guard, the experienced veteran with gray hair, had been watching the entire proceedings from his peripheral vision while maintaining his official stance. As Ronaldo completed his salute to the third guard and began walking toward him, the older soldier seemed to prepare himself mentally for what was coming. This man had served his country faithfully for decades, through different governments and changing times, always with the same dedication and professionalism. When Ronaldo reached the veteran guard, he paused for the longest time yet. Looking at this man's weathered face and experienced hands, the footballer seemed to understand that he was in the presence of someone who had dedicated his entire adult life to service and duty. The respect between them was mutual and profound, creating a moment of connection that transcended their different backgrounds and professions. The final salute was the most emotional of all. Ronaldo held his position with such dignity and respect that many people in the crowd began to cry openly. The veteran guard, despite decades of training in maintaining emotional control, could not completely hide the moisture that appeared in his eyes. In all his years of faithful service, this was perhaps the most meaningful recognition he had ever received. After completing his individual salute to each of the 4 guards, Ronaldo took several steps backward, until he could see all of them clearly in his field of vision. The crowd that had gathered was now quite large and stretched across a significant portion of the palace entrance area. People from all walks of life had stopped what they were doing to witness this extraordinary moment of respect and recognition. Standing there in his perfectly tailored suit, Ronaldo looked at the 4 guards, who represented dedication, discipline, and service to something greater than themselves. The morning sun had climbed higher in the sky and was now casting a golden light across the palace grounds, creating an almost magical atmosphere around the scene that was unfolding. The ancient stones seemed to glow with warmth, and the ceremonial uniforms of the guards sparkled with their gold decorations. Then Ronaldo did something that no one expected. He raised his right hand once more and gave a final collective salute to all 4 guards together. This gesture was different from the individual salutes he had given to each man. This was a tribute to the Royal Guard as a unit, to the institution they represented, and to all the men and women who served their countries with such dedication and honor. The collective salute lasted for what seemed like an eternity, but was probably only about 10 seconds. During those moments, the entire palace entrance was completely silent except for the gentle sound of wind moving through the nearby trees and the distant clicking of camera shutters. Everyone present understood they were witnessing something that would be remembered and talked about for years to come. The 4 guards, still maintaining their official positions, seemed to stand even taller and prouder as they received this unprecedented honor. Despite their training to remain emotionless and motionless, it was impossible for them to completely hide the impact this recognition was having on them. Their eyes remained fixed straight ahead as required, but their faces showed a mixture of pride, gratitude, and deep emotion. What happened next surprised everyone even more than what had already taken place. From a doorway near the palace entrance, a figure in a more elaborate uniform began walking toward the scene. This was the captain of the Royal Guard, a man who had been watching the entire proceedings from inside the building. He was a seasoned officer with decades of experience and responsibility for the entire guard unit. The captain had tears in his eyes as he approached Ronaldo and the 4 guards. In all his years of service and leadership, he had never seen anything like what had just taken place. Important visitors came to the palace regularly, but none had ever taken the time to acknowledge and honor his men in such a meaningful and respectful way. The gesture had touched him deeply, both as a leader and as a human being. When the captain reached the area where Ronaldo was standing, he did something that shocked everyone present, including his own guards. Breaking protocol for what may have been the first time in his entire career, the captain raised his hand and saluted Ronaldo in return. This was not part of any official ceremony or planned event. It was a spontaneous expression of gratitude and respect from one leader to another. The return salute from the captain created a wave of emotion that swept through the entire crowd. People began applauding softly at first, then more enthusiastically, as they realized they were witnessing a truly historic moment. The applause was respectful and heartfelt, not the kind of loud celebration you might hear at a sports event, but the kind of appreciation you show when you have seen something genuinely moving and significant. The 4 guards, still maintaining their official positions, seemed to glow with pride as their captain honored the man who had honored them. Their faces showed emotions they rarely allowed themselves to express while on duty. The young guard with kind eyes had tears running down his cheeks. The veteran with gray hair was smiling despite his efforts to maintain his serious expression. Even the two other guards showed signs of being deeply moved by what was taking place. Palace staff members who had gathered to watch were openly crying now. Many of them had worked at the palace for years and had seen the guards perform their duties day after day without recognition or acknowledgement. To see them finally receive the respect and honor they deserved from someone as famous and respected as Cristiano Ronaldo was overwhelming for everyone who cared about these dedicated men. The reporters and photographers present understood they were documenting something extraordinary. This was not just a sports star visiting a palace or receiving an award. This was a moment of pure human connection and respect that transcended fame, status, and protocol. Their cameras captured every second of the exchange between Ronaldo, the guards, and their captain. Tourists and visitors who had simply been in the wrong place at the right time found themselves witnessing one of the most moving displays of respect and humanity they had ever seen. Many of them would later say that being present at this moment changed their perspective on what it means to truly honor and appreciate the service of others. As the captain completed his salute and lowered his hand, he stepped closer to Ronaldo. The two men looked at each other with mutual respect and understanding. Without words, they both knew that what had just taken place was something special and rare. The captain extended his hand and Ronaldo shook it warmly, sealing a moment of connection that went far beyond the formal requirements of the occasion. The handshake between Ronaldo and the captain seemed to signal that the spontaneous ceremony was complete. The crowd continued to applaud respectfully as both men stepped back and acknowledged the four guards one final time. The guards, still maintaining their positions but clearly moved by what had happened, seemed to stand with even greater pride and dignity than before. Word of what had taken place was already beginning to spread beyond the palace grounds. People in the crowd were sharing photos and videos on social media, and the story was starting to reach audiences around the world. Within hours, millions of people would see the footage of Ronaldo's tribute to the royal guard and his exchange with their captain. The palace officials who had been waiting to escort Ronaldo inside finally approached him, but they did so with a new level of respect and admiration. They had seen many famous visitors come to the palace, but none had ever demonstrated such character and humanity. The scheduled meeting with the royal family would proceed as planned, but everyone involved knew that the most memorable part of the day had already taken place outside the palace doors. As preparations were made to continue with the official program, the four guards remained at their posts, continuing their duty with the same dedication they had shown before Ronaldo's arrival. But something had changed for them. They had been recognized and honored in a way that would stay with them for the rest of their lives, and their service now carried an additional sense of pride and validation. Within just a few hours of the remarkable scene at the palace, the videos and photographs of Ronaldo saluting the royal guard began spreading across the internet like wildfire. Social media platforms were flooded with shares, comments, and reactions from people all around the world who were moved by what they had witnessed. The story reached every continent and was translated into dozens of languages as it touched hearts everywhere. The first video to go viral was taken by a tourist who had been at the palace purely by chance. Her shaky phone footage captured the entire sequence of events from Ronaldo's approach to the guards through his final salute and the captain's emotional response. Within 6 hours, this amateur video had been viewed over 10 million times and shared by celebrities, politicians, and ordinary people who were inspired by the display of respect and humanity. Comments poured in from military personnel around the world expressing their gratitude for seeing their service recognized and honored in such a public way. Veterans from different countries shared their own stories of long hours of duty and the rare occasions when civilians had acknowledged their sacrifice. Active duty soldiers posted messages thanking Ronaldo for understanding and appreciating what it means to serve with dedication and discipline. But the impact went far beyond just military communities. Teachers shared the video with their students as an example of how to show respect for others. Parents used it to teach their children about recognizing the hard work and dedication of people who serve the community. Business leaders discussed it in meetings as an example of true leadership and character. The simple act of saluting had become a powerful lesson about human decency and appreciation. The Spanish Royal Guard themselves released an official statement within 48 hours of the incident. The statement expressed their deep gratitude to Cristiano Ronaldo for his unprecedented display of respect and recognition. They described how much the gesture had meant to the individual guards involved and to the entire organization. The statement was read aloud on national television and broadcast around the world, further amplifying the story. The 4 guards who had been personally honored by Ronaldo were interviewed by several news organizations, though they maintained their professional dignity throughout all the attention. The veteran guard with gray hair spoke emotionally about how in all his decades of service, no moment had ever meant as much to him as receiving that salute from the world-famous footballer. His words brought tears to the eyes of the reporters and viewers alike. The young guard with kind eyes described how Ronaldo's gesture had validated his choice to serve his country and made him proud to wear the uniform. He explained that standing guard could sometimes feel thankless and invisible, but that one moment of recognition had changed everything for him. His interview was particularly popular among young people who were inspired by both his dedication and Ronaldo's respect for it. The captain of the Royal Guard appeared on several television programs to discuss the significance of what had happened. He explained that in breaking protocol to salute Ronaldo back, he had been acting not just as a military officer, but as a human being who was overwhelmed by the respect shown to his men. He described the decision as instinctive and necessary, regardless of the rules and regulations that typically govern such situations. Football fans around the world reacted with tremendous pride in their hero. Many said that this moment showed them a side of Ronaldo they had never seen before, and made them admire him not just for his athletic achievements but for his character as a person. Fan clubs organized events to honor military personnel in their own communities, inspired by Ronaldo's example of recognizing and appreciating service. The story reached the highest levels of government and society. The King of Spain personally called Ronaldo to thank him for the gesture and invited him to return to the palace at any time. Political leaders from multiple countries praised the footballer for setting an example of how public figures should use their platform and influence to recognize the service of others. But perhaps the most meaningful responses came from ordinary people who were inspired to show more appreciation for the service members, police officers, firefighters, healthcare workers, and other dedicated professionals in their own communities. Social media was filled with stories of people who had been motivated by Ronaldo's example to thank and recognize the people who serve others in their daily lives. Military academies around the world began using the video as part of their training. Programs showing new recruits an example of the respect and honor their service could earn when performed with dedication and professionalism. The footage became a powerful recruiting tool and a source of motivation for people considering careers in public service. Years later, whenever Ronaldo attended official events where honor guards or military personnel were present, he quietly continued his practice of acknowledging their service with respectful salutes. It became his personal tradition, a way of ensuring that the lesson of that morning at the Spanish palace was never forgotten. Each time he did this, it created new moments of recognition and appreciation for dedicated service members. The 4 guards from that memorable morning were eventually promoted within their organization, though they always insisted that their career advancement was due to their professional performance rather than their moment of fame. However, their superiors and colleagues knew that the pride and motivation they gained from being honored by Ronaldo had made them even better soldiers and leaders within the Royal Guard. The captain, who had broken protocol to salute Ronaldo back, was initially concerned about potential disciplinary action for his decision. Instead, he received commendations from his superiors and recognition from the royal family for his leadership and humanity. His spontaneous gesture was seen as an example of good judgment and appropriate response to an extraordinary situation. The palace where the incident took place became an even more popular tourist destination, with many visitors specifically asking to see the location where Ronaldo had honored the Royal Guard. A small plaque was eventually installed near the main entrance, not commemorating the incident directly, but celebrating the values of respect, service, and human dignity that the moment had represented. The ripple effects of that single morning continued to spread for years, inspiring countless acts of kindness, recognition, and appreciation around the world. What had started as one man's spontaneous decision to honor the dedication of 4 guards had become a global reminder of the importance of recognizing and respecting the service of others. The simple act of raising a hand to the forehead in salute had created a legacy of respect and humanity that would be remembered long after the football trophies were forgotten. In the end, the story of Ronaldo and the Royal Guard became more than just a viral video or a feel-good news story. It became a timeless example of how true greatness is measured not just by personal achievements, but by how we treat and honor others, especially those who serve with dedication and sacrifice. The scene that stunned everyone that morning at the palace had become a permanent part of the legacy of both Cristiano Ronaldo and the Royal Guard, proving that moments of genuine human connection and respect have the power to inspire and change the world.